Let's talk about all the ways in which assumptions show up in our conversations, our relationships, and our fights. Since I've been making assumptions and paying the price for them for years now, I'll share my stories as examples of what not to do and offer some alternative approaches. You should be warned, though, I talk about some tough topics, and some of that might be triggering for you. Because to me, I don't think it's acceptable to not talk about this stuff. Oh, I'm also a little cussy. Please take care of yourself as you listen. Make yourself comfortable, grab a snack and a drink, and let's get started. Welcome back to Confessions of a Chronic Assumer. I'm Ellen Patnode, your host, and I am a chronic assumer. So today we're going to be talking about how assumptions affect our listening. They affect how we listen, if we listen, the ways in which we listen. So do you think you already know what the other person is going to say? That's an assumption. Do you think you already know what their perspective is? Also an assumption. Do you think you know the reasons behind how they're feeling, what their words are, what their actions are? That's another assumption as well. Honestly, this is an area where we all know how to listen effectively, and we know we should listen effectively, but we don't. I don't think it's a matter of not knowing how to do it. There's a million books and podcasts and things out there about how to be a better listener. I don't think we need another lesson on how to be a better listener. I think we need reminders of the simple practices that we can put into place that will make a huge difference. And we also need some reminders on the importance of taking responsibility for our own behavior. So, what happens when we're in these situations? I'll give you several examples from my own life. How do assumptions interfere with what it is that we decide to do next? And how do we overcome the assumptions and engage more productively with the people that are around us? So in my book, I Thought You Knew, Confessions of a Chronic Assumer, I told a story, and I really went back and forth for a long time about whether this story should go into the book or not, because I was afraid that by telling it, I assumed that by telling this story, it would damage my credibility as a coach. And I still have that worry now, but I'm going to share the story with you anyway, because it's such a great example of assuming that we think we know what someone else is going to show up to talk about, or we think we know what they're going to say. So before I actually went through a certification process to get certified as a coach, I more sort of dabbled in coaching, I'll say. I'd never been formally trained in how to do it, but I assumed it couldn't be that hard, and I knew what I was doing. It sounds so arrogant to me now to say that, but here we are. I had a client, an early client, who I had worked with the organization and his team for a long time, and he always came to our coaching sessions with the same kind of complaints, the same kinds of challenges, and I assumed that that day would be no different. Right before our coaching call began, I had received a phone call from another client who wanted me to put a proposal together for a pretty big series of events. It was exciting. I was excited about it. It was a series of workshops, some new material. I hadn't gotten to do as much work with this newer client yet. So I was pretty distracted thinking about what I was going to put in this proposal and starting to daydream about the ideas that I had. And my poor coaching client is showing up to our call. I assume I already know what he's going to talk about. I'm not really listening. And the consequences, he dropped a proverbial bomb and I completely missed it. He shared something profound and I said, and just kept looking at him with sort of a blank expression on my face. And he stared at me and I could see that he was starting to get emotional. And I thought, well, shit. I missed something. So I immediately said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I think I missed the last thing you said. I'm so sorry. I wasn't listening and I apologize. Can you please back up and say again what you just said? And the proverbial bomb that he dropped was that he'd been let go from his job. So I spent the rest of that session very tuned in to everything he had to say and really leaned in and listened well, but was still very distracted through the whole conversation now by beating myself up for having assumed that I already knew that today would be just like any other day. So we all know we're supposed to be good listeners. We all know we're supposed to give people our undivided attention. But if it's helpful for you to know that you're not alone, I'll share that story with you as an example of how even a professional person whose livelihood relies on being a good listener sometimes has missteps, because I am also quite imperfect and human. On the personal side, another example, in our interpersonal relationships, this is a big place where this pops up because of those well-worn pathways that we talked about a couple episodes ago. We think we know what someone's perspective is going to be. We think we know how they're going to react or respond to something that we say. So I get into this situation with Danny a lot. Danny is my wife. And I will 100% frame something that I'm about to tell her, share with her, based on what I assume her perspective is going to be. It literally just happened the other day. She has very strong feelings about medications. She just doesn't like anyone that she loves to be taking a medication that isn't absolutely necessary. She just has a lot of concern about long-term effects and things like that. I had been to the doctor, and my doctor had prescribed a new medication for me. And in that appointment, I told my doctor, I'm going to take the information, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to need to talk to Danny about it because I know she's going to have really strong feelings about this. So let me talk to her. Let me do some research. Let me think about it. And then I'll come back to you and let you know what I've decided. And I came home and I said to Danny, she said, "How did the doctor's appointment go?" And I said, "Well, you're not going to like what the doctor had to say." And she was like, "Okay, explain." So I said, I started an explanation without getting into my personal medical situation. I started my conversation by listing all the reasons why I knew she would not like what I was about to say. I listed some justifications about why she should support me moving forward with this medication regardless. And she just looked at me and she was like, Can you just tell me what the hell it is she said? Can you just tell me what the recommendation was? Because you're just giving me a lot of reasons why you think I'm going to react badly, and you're not even giving me a chance to hear what this is about. Called out. So I did. I shared exactly what the test results had showed and what the recommended process to move forward would be. And she totally surprised me by saying, "I mean, it sounds like it's probably important. It's important to be proactive about this stuff, and I support you moving forward." And it completely surprised me because I had made a boatload of assumptions about what her reaction would be. I think we do this most often with people that we know really well, the people that are the closest to us. We have this track record or history with them of watching them respond to, react to other situations. We've seen them in a multitude of situations. And so we make some assumptions about, we jump to conclusions and make some assumptions about how we think they're going to react, often before we even give them a chance to get a full understanding of what is going on in the first place, like I did. So with interpersonal relationships in particular, we have to really be careful in thinking about, are we really Are we really prepared to listen to this other person, or are we making so many assumptions about what we think their reactions are going to be that we preempt the whole conversation? Sort of in the same realm, but a little bit different. When I lived in Nicaragua, way back 25 or so years ago, when I was living there, I was working full time. The other person I was with was working full time. We shared a house. And I had grown up in a very working class family. We didn't have cleaning people. We didn't have housekeepers. And so that concept of getting a housekeeper was completely foreign to me. And I also just felt like it would I assumed that if I got a housekeeper to make my life a little easier, everyone else would think that we were just being, rich Americans coming down to throw our money around or something like that. I had to overcome that assumption to realize that keeping house in rural Nicaragua involves so much daily manual labor, at least back in 1997 it did, that it's not possible to work full-time and keep up on the laundry and the food prep and the shopping and everything because just of the way life worked there at that time. So I finally got over that and hired a housekeeper. But a lot of people had said to me, they're not trustworthy. You need to be very careful. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll be careful. I'll pay attention. So I hired Maria. She was our housekeeper. She'd been working for us for a few weeks. And one day her daughter showed up at my door. Her daughter was, I think, 12 maybe, or 13 at the time. She showed up at my door and said, I'm here to clean in my mother's place. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not having a 12-year-old clean my house. No. Like, where's your mom? What's going on? And she said, well, she's just not able to be here today. But she didn't offer any explanation. I immediately started making a whole bunch of assumptions about what must be going on. Well, everyone must have been correct. They're not trustworthy. Here we go. This is the beginning of some terrible thing. I am not proud of any of these assumptions, for the record. 24-year-old me was quite comfortable with them. 51-year-old me, not so much. Anyway, I told her no. I told her she couldn't clean. I told her, just, your mom can come back whenever she's ready, but I'm really uncomfortable with you cleaning my house. That night, when I got home from work, I found Maria sitting at my table. The door was locked, which was weird. So I came in. She immediately was like, lock the door, lock the door. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? What is happening? And I said, were you sick today? Like, I missed you, but I wasn't comfortable with your daughter cleaning. And she said, look, I'm really sorry. I had a situation. I'll try not to let it happen again. But she wasn't really offering much in the way of detail. And my assumptions just went crazy, thinking all kinds of weird things that none of which were true. Finally, she said, okay, I'm going to share my story with you. And she sat me down and she told me the story of what had happened the previous night, which is that her ex-husband, who had been very abusive, had come to the house drunk and had busted down their door. And she had spent the day getting the door replaced and going to court, waiting to try to get a court order barring him from stepping foot on her property. As you might imagine, I felt like a complete asshole and realized quickly I had absolutely no idea what was going on in this woman's life, but it was a hell of a lot more than I knew anything about. And I was immediately filled with embarrassment over all of the assumptions that I had made. When I really listened to her story and leaned in to hear what she was really going through and what was happening in her life, I realized I had no idea behind the motivations that she had. Why did she want that door locked? Because she lives in fear that her ex-husband was going to find her wherever she was and that he might try to hurt anyone that she was with. She thought very highly of me. She cared about me. She didn't want anything to happen to me or my housemate. So really listening to her and her story is what finally helped me understand her motivations some of the reasons behind why she behaved the way that she did, and her embarrassment at even having to be in that situation and causing me to mistrust that she wouldn't do a good job, because she was well aware of the reputation that housekeepers had in the local community. Here's the bottom line on this stuff. We have to be willing to do a better job of listening. That means put your damn phone down. Close your laptop. Sit and really genuinely give your undivided attention to the people that are around you. We do not know what folks are walking through in their lives on a day-to-day basis. We don't understand because we don't ask and we don't stop and listen to whatever it is they're going to offer. And sometimes life is just moving too quickly. Work is moving too quickly. So we don't fully share, or we don't think we're supposed to share what's really going on in our lives. Regardless, if you put down your phone, if you close your laptop, if you give your undivided attention to the person sitting in front of you, you may be surprised by what you learn. And you may have a lot of your assumptions about them, about their perspective, about their motivations called into question. You may find out that your assumptions were incorrect. Get curious. Be willing to ask more questions. And there are very respectful ways that you can ask questions in the situation. You can offer things like, this is a really interesting point of view. I'd love to understand more. Can you tell me more about your thinking behind this? Or can you help me understand what sort of experiences you've had that have led you to this moment or have led you to this line of thinking? You can ask open-ended questions in a very thoughtful way that invites people to lean into the conversation, to share with you, and to help you gain a better understanding so you don't have to rely on assumptions. It's that process of kind of peeling back the layers. And then always sitting down and reflecting on what happened so that the next time you can do something different. You can make an intentional choice to do something different. Thank you for joining me today. I want you to come back next week. We're going to talk about trust. We're going to talk about how assumptions affect how and if we choose to extend trust to other people. Because, my friends, it is 100% a choice. Until then, connect with me on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn at Ellen Patnode, on Facebook and Instagram at Patnode Coaching. And remember what the late, great Albert Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. We've got to be willing to do different to get different. Have a great week.